Well, it's the highest daily total this year. Yesterday, 430 migrants crossed the Channel. It beats the previous record earlier this month of 346. The migrants made the dangerous crossing to the Kent coast in 14 small boats.
The UK has seen unprecedented levels of migrant crossings this year. They're running at more than twice the rate of last year. The last round of crossings brings the total who have reached the country in small boats this year to nearly 8,200 so far.
Well, let's talk now to the immigration lawyer, Harjap Bhangal, who is going to answer the question which everybody asks, is why are people prepared to risk their lives in the busiest shipping lane in the world to do this?
There are plenty of reasons, and quite a few. One of them, of course, is because they fear going back to their country because there's either a war there or they feel that a threat. Another is perhaps to better their lives with a mixture of economic migrancy and survival. A third is they might have relatives or communities already established in the UK and they feel more at home joining them and safer joining them here as opposed to in other, say, European countries. And fourthly, the main thing is that's where the gangs promise them and take them, and that's where the gangs take money for them for. The gangs, unfortunately, don't give a menu to people as to where taking, do you want to go France? Do you want to go Greece? You go where the gang tells you to go. And that's it. And, this is proportionally where the gangs and the migrant trafficking gangs, which actually earn more than drug trafficking. And I think a lot of your viewers don't know that, or perhaps, don't know that migrant trafficking earns more than drug trafficking. That's a big thing. And yet these gangs run without fear and without any risk. You hardly ever hear of a migrant gang being caught and being sent to life for prison. And whereas you hear about drug dealers and drug gangs going every week. So the gangs are always 10 steps ahead of any sort of enforcement or any sort of restrictions that we have.
Well, why is that? Because it's hardly, particularly subterfuge or subtle to go and buy a, 20-foot dinghy. Surely it must be possible to identify some of the people behind this.
Yeah, I mean, to say that the UK doesn't know who the gangs are, that I think will be a falsehood. I've been doing this job 20 years, and I remember when people used to come into Dover, and they still do. The routes are the same. They come from the same countries, the same ports, and they land at the same places. The Kent coast, Liverpool, Tilbury, we've got Dover, and they land at the same places. The UK government knows this, border enforcement knows this. Yet are we really trying to say that for 20 years, while I've been watching, that we can't stop these gangs? And we don't know, they don't really change their methods and they don't really change their routes. So there's either an unwillingness or a lack of ability to catch these people or to stop these people. People just don't come across dinghies on the beach. They're strategically placed for them by the gangs. They're told between this time and this time, you get to that beach, there's a dinghy for you, you get on it and you make your way for the UK. That's the way the gangs operate. And, they don't say, right, go and, just walking for a stroll down the beach and here's a dinghy, we'll decide to go to the UK. But this is strategically planned. And if we had proper surveillance, then I'm sure this could be stopped. However, we hear a lot of talk from Priti Patel and previous governments, be it Theresa May and David Cameron. However, in reality, what we're seeing is the migrant crossing numbers are going up, whereas asylum claims are going down. Therefore, we don't really know how many are getting through and how many are getting caught. There just seems to be a lot more focus on the ones getting caught now.
But what that suggests is that there are fewer and fewer of them who are genuine asylum seekers. We're looking at the majority. And anecdotally, most people who are sitting on the beach and seeing these boats come ashore, most of it is they're full of young men of workable age who are clearly economic migrants.
Well, we can't say that they're most because we don't have statistics for it. Statistics aren't released. So say out of 430 who came over yesterday, no one really knows. We've just been shown photographs. And in them photographs, there are young men. In them photographs, you have to admittedly, you've shown them on your channel today. There are families, there are children. So there is a mixture of that. Now, young men tend not to be married and don't have any families and they don't have any burdens. So therefore, they're not expected to bring women with them, whereas families, people who are middle-aged like myself, will have small kids and families to bring, and hence we travel with families and we'd be loath to leave them behind. Whereas a young man in his 20s has no fear of leaving anything behind. However, there is a mixture of economic migrants in there. There's no doubt about it. It's not essentially down to these people. They're not here paying for a service for a menu waiting to come to the UK. And if they've been already caught in France, and if they've applied for asylum in France, then they get sent back there under the Dublin Convention. So we have this third-party country rule which says if you've been fingerprinted and if you've claimed asylum in any European country, then it is the duty of that country to deal with your claim. And if you do land on these shores, then you get sent back there. So these are people who've managed to get all across Europe without claiming asylum in the EU country or without getting caught. Now that takes a lot of ability, first of all, and that takes a lot of planning. And that is not something a person can do on their own. This is something where organized gangs have got people in on it. I'm not suggesting that the UK government is in on it, but this cannot be done without the police's cooperation. This cannot be done without traffic police's cooperation. This cannot be done with border control. You do not get from Russia to the UK by crossing so many borders without being stopped once if you're in a lorry, in the back of a lorry. So this is how good the gangs are, and this is how extensive their network is. And their bosses are sitting in countries where extradition isn't possible. And the people that do get caught, the lorry drivers, they are essentially the fall guys, and they're people right at the end of the scales. And even if you do put them away for 20 years, you won't stop the bosses operating because it's like a mafia. They're replaceable. So this is how it works. It's not essentially young men just queuing up and saying, right, we want to go to the UK. There's a mixture of people that come, and the gangs will take over those who pay. Essentially, if you've got money.
But hang on, can we just talk about the immigrants, the asylum seekers, whatever term you want to use for them? As soon as they've gone into another country, whether it's France, Italy, wherever it is, they are automatically breaking the law by trying to get into the UK, aren't they?
Well, they're not under any duty under law. The law doesn't compel them to claim asylum in any first country. People have got to understand that. So if I land in Germany, where it might be morally right for me to claim asylum in Germany, thinking that I'm safe, I'm not duty bound by law to do that. I can claim asylum where I see fit and where I feel safe. And that's a right granted under the convention to which the UK and many other countries are signatories. So that's what the law says on that. The fact that they're crossing borders, they're not doing it essentially themselves. They're being trafficked. That's the whole point of being trafficked. It's essentially you're being put in a van and you are taken across borders, and you're literally told this is where you're going to end up. Sometimes you open a lorry and you don't even know where you are. So you have to ask the people around you, what country am I in? Where am I?
Hang on, there's a massive difference. There's a massive difference between put in a lorry and not knowing where you're going, from being put on a beach with a line of dinghies. You climb into those dinghies. You're not being shot at. You're not in a country where you're feeling threatened because they're leaving from France. That's where that argument surely falls.
No, what happens is if the lorry drops you off at the beach. So the lorries dropped you off at the beach. The traffickers say they're the dinghies waiting for you. You get in them at that time. And you've been trafficked. You don't know where you are. You're scared. You're going to do what these traffickers do. These are criminals. If you make a noise or you say, right, I want to be detected, you're going to get shot. There are many migrants who don't make the journey because they get killed on the way in the jungles of Russia, on the Slovak Republic border. That border is virtually a death trap for migrants. They get trafficked. The gangs say, you do what we say, you stay where we say, you go toilet when we say, you eat what we give you. You know, it's not a nutritious food. It's not like going on holiday at all. You do what the gangs say. It's a bit like drug trafficking as well. If you raise the alarm and say, oh, look, this guy's trafficking me, you'll be dead, because that to them is lost money. Every group that a gang gets caught, or every group that gets caught is lost money to a gang. It's probably hundreds of thousands of pounds, and these gangs don't tolerate that. So you are pretty much at mercy. Yes, the people who get dropped off at a certain place and left, they do claim asylum in the other countries in Europe. We're not the largest taker of migrants in Europe. We know that. Other countries take a lot of asylum seekers and take proportionately quite a lot of asylum seekers. France take their fair share, Greece, Spain, Netherlands, Holland, Germany, Austria. They all take asylum seekers.
Well, what happens to these people when they do arrive? You know, they're under the duress of the gangs. How many of them just slip through the net and end up being, continue to be in the possession of those gangs?
Once they arrive in the UK, the gangs will then, the ones that get through without detection, the gangs will then say, right, we want a balanced payment. And sometimes, I mean, especially Chinese gangs, they operate in the fact that they will hold your family member hostage back home in China. When you've reached there, they'll say, right, we'll release them. You pay X amount of money. That's a common theme if you read how Chinese asylum seekers end up in the UK. Most of them, once they arrive at Dover and they get detected, then they will claim asylum. Their asylum claim starts. They will pretty much be detained. Their claim will be processed. Something called a screening interview happens. A screening interview is conducted by an immigration officer, and it's to determine who that person is, where he's come from, what route he's travelled, how he's travelled, and why he's come to the UK. After that, there'll be a substantive interview. That substantive interview is the purpose of the main cause of asylum claim. They'll ask the person, why have you come here? What do you fear back home? What is your backstory? And why did you not claim asylum elsewhere en route? How did you travel? A decision is then given, and while that decision is pending, and remember, decisions can take years to come, and that's not the fault of the asylum seeker. This Home Office, which makes a decision, every year we get a report from the House of Commons, a select committee, which says for the last 5 years when I've been reading it, is that the Home Office is not fit for purpose. It's not fit for the purpose of dealing with asylum claims. It's not fit for the purpose of deciding. So we essentially got a system which is not fit for what the work it's given to do. And as a result of that, you've got backlogs. You've got 50% of appeals succeeding because decisions are made wrong. A lot of decisions are made by gap year students who were recruited for the summer. We have 60,000 claims that have been waiting more than a year to be decided. And on average, a claim takes between 2 to 3 hours to decide. So something which takes 2 to 3 hours to decide, 60,000 of them have been waiting a year for a decision. So you can't detain a migrant for a year because it's costly. So what they do is they release the migrant out and ask them to sign on, or they decide, right, here's housing available for you. You can stay there while your claim is decided. Now that housing, contrary to popular opinion, is not 4-star hotels. What it is, British landlords who own property pitch to local councils and say, I've got vacant property. If you want to house asylum seekers here, you can. You have to pay me X amount of money. So the British people and landlords actually benefit from asylum seekers being housed. Now, during COVID, a lot of 4-star and 5-star hotels were empty, and they decided, how are we going to supplement our income? And they opened their doors to the council, and hence refugees are being housed there. Now, that isn't the fault of the migrant. They don't get to choose, do you want to stay at this hotel or that hotel? What they get told, look, we're sending you to Newcastle, we're going to send you to Southampton, you've got to stay there.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.